Anytime. Good morning, Garland Nixon here. We're talking with Dr. Kazi Sohag, a world-renowned economist. We're going to be talking about BRICS and international geopolitics. Let's talk. Good morning. Dr. Sohag is an associate professor at Petersburg. Well, I'm having a rough time. It's early in the morning here. He's the associate professor at St. Petersburg State University, and he's a director of the International Regional Economics Research Group, and he is a top economist known worldwide. Dr. Sohag, it is a pleasure and an honor to have you with us this morning.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you today, and it
So
was
let's,
nice meeting you in St. Petersburg 2 weeks
yes,
before.
thank you very much. Certainly appreciate you attending our forum and speaking, being a part of it. Well, there's a lot of interesting things going on, and let's get started here. One of the things that's obvious is that the power dynamics in many areas, but particularly in the economic sphere, are changing in the world today. People are using terms like multipolar. I've used the term multinodal. Who's the foundation of the base? Is it Russia? Is it China? Is it India? So we're going to discuss some of these things. Let's start here. The United States has enjoyed a unipolar position. We could argue, some say since 1945, others argue, starting in, say, 1990 and the collapse of the Soviet Union. The United States clearly is struggling to hold on to that unipolar position, which seems, in my opinion, to have faded away. The cost and the benefits of unipolarity and of attempting to hold on to unipolarity that seems to have faded away. Is the United States incurring greater cost than the benefits it enjoys? Your thoughts?
Thank you very much. That's a very broad question. It's not very easy answer, but anyway, I'll try to answer your question from the political science point of view. So the first of all, whether the multipolarity is a natural process, meaning what is most sustainable in what is the convergence, I mean, in which direction naturally we should move forward. So there are many school of thought, but what I understand is that holding unipolarity has some cost, obviously. So and somebody need to pay for it. So when the cost of holding this sole power is higher than benefit, then the system is going down. So this is very obvious. So um, you are very right. So there is a question whether the US is holding the superpower from after the Second World War or after the collapse of Soviet Union. But probably my understanding is that yes, after Second World War, USA got enormous power that is led by the Bretton Woods policy by creation of the supra-international institution, including UN, World Bank, IMF, World Trade Organization, or GATT. So these give them enormous power. So the Cold War started with Soviet Union, so that we can say there's a bipolar world. But after collapse of Soviet Union, the US was holding the sole superpower. So there was no close rival that can good question US superpower. But this dynamic certainly has changed from 9/11 precisely, because after that we see the invasion of in Afghanistan, or so many wars that the U.S. government had to finance. So this finance, meaning that government had to go for a expansionary fiscal policy. So expenditure was much higher than government revenue. So what was the source of the finance? So this is one of the cost of unipolarity that USA is currently incurring, the high fiscal expenditure or the public debt. So right now, the US public debt or central government public debt is more than, I think, 125%, which is 37 trillion, so much higher than their GDP. So that's one of the cost, the big cost. And then second is that uh, the USA is holding the monetary power. So there are three things basically giving the superpower. Is this one is that monetary power that is called the Wall Street, then their formidable military power, and their Silicon Valley or the technology. So these three sectors is giving them power. But when this power you are using and using, so it can diminish. And we can see that. For instance, because of US holding this reserve currency, dollar as a reserve currency, so how the dollar will circulate in the global economy. So that's why the US needs to have a trade deficit along with the public finance deficit. So we see that the US economy now incurring a huge trade deficit. So meaning through the trade deficit is one of the channel that the dollar is circulating in the global economy. So now US is importing goods and services from many other economies, from like, for instance, Japan, China, Germany, France, or UK. So now if US is exporting same amounts of goods and services, then that's going to be a symmetric trade. So dollar is coming back. So how the dollar is sustaining the global economy? For instance, when these countries is exporting goods and services to US economy, and they are so US is paying with the dollar, right? So this dollar, this government of these countries buying US Treasury bond or through the banking system, so multipliers. So this is the in global economy, dollar is circulating. So US economy is based on the free market or laissez-faire system. So this is their framework. So we see that over time, when US economy is imposing sanction in different countries, that basically is against their economic framework. So that's why I think the role of dollar is going down, since all the counterpart is thinking about some kind of alternatives. This is the second cost. The third cost, also US government is spending a lot of money in different countries in the form of US aid. Let's say social infrastructure. And we see that there are many regime change or the color revolution through this money. So those problems probably could be solved through the diplomatic means, but US choose the military solutions. So that is one of the cost. And another important cost of holding unipolarity is the economy is focusing basically very strategic sectors, not economy as a whole. So meaning the disparity is going to be very higher. So few sectors are going increasing or booming. You can see that's the military industry or technology. So what about the other industry? Other industry is not going faster comparing with this industry. So that's why the resource is distributed in the hands of few. So inequality is really very high. So I could show you the statistics right now. So let's say top 1% people, their share of US GDP is more than 20%, while the bottom 50% share of GDP may be 15%. So the inequality is really very high. So probably the outcome of this inequality you can see in the newer mayor election. So Mamdani win this election because he was talking about the working class or inequality. So these are the costs. So another one is that since dollar they are using for the political purpose, so that's why the counterpart like China Iran or Russia, they are thinking about some alternatives. So that's why, since China economy is rising, very faster growth, so I believe that now dollar is being challenged in global economy. So economically, from this kind of a background, I can conclude that we are probably living in a multipolar world from economic perspective.
That makes sense. And something that you said there, just to make a note of for the future that I picked up that I would like to relate to the listeners is this. And I didn't think of this, but this is brilliant. Since
Mhm.
the United States is focusing now on holding a unipolar position, on dominating the world economically, militarily, diplomatically, etc., the focus of the country, rather than being on the economy, well, we have to have a diverse economy where we have industry and we have, various things, commodities and all kinds of investment. Rather than that, the US government only focuses on the particular areas of the economy that will help it, that will strengthen it in its ability to hold on to unipolarity. So it says, well, we're not going to worry about all the other things we might make. We'll just put all the money in military. We'll put all the money in technology. We'll put all the money in these things. Why? Because our only focus is holding on to unipolar power. Where if the as an example, I went to Belarus and I was talking to people there about the economy, and they said we're a small country. We need a diverse economy. So we make they make like um, farming equipment, but additionally, they say we sell a lot of dairy products, but we also make technology. Why? We must have a diverse economy because we're small. And if one part of our economy goes, we don't want to collapse. Their focus is having a diverse economy to be strong in a changing world. If you're in technology and the technology completely changes, tomorrow you could be out of business. But the US is not focusing on its economy. It's focusing only on the parts of its economy that will help it to achieve domination. I didn't think about that, but that's a very, very powerful point that I can take from this.
Can add something more. So
Yes.
we are living in a fragmented world right now. So we see that the geo-economic fragmentation, political fragmentation, fragmentation in trade. So because of this fragmentation, not trade dynamics is changing, not necessarily the volume of trade is going down, but we see that different blocks are rising. So the direction of the trade is basically rising. So when USA is their trade deficit was very high, so that's why Donald Trump, when he came to power, he based on this proportionate trade deficit with the countries, so he imposed a reciprocal taxation system. So this uh, tariff or taxation systems is not going to change the economy overnight, because if USA is going to compete with Chinese economy, um, so they need a huge investment in energy sector, the connectivity throughout the economy, throughout the country. So right now, if you see the China has a surplus or overcapacity. They have engineer. So this kind to catch up, Chinese development strategy, I think USA needs a long term. So in short term, it's not possible to catch up. So simple tariff policy is not gonna make any difference. This is what I think.
That makes sense. And because of US politics, which are similar to US business, which is only concerned about what happens the next quarter, what happens the next 6 months, do we
Yeah.
turn a profit this year? Do we turn a first quarter, second quarter?
Yeah, well,
Because the focus of business in the US is short term, the long term investment does is not a part of generally a part of the thought process. It's not part of the concern. So this is excellent information. Let's move on to the next one, and that is, where do we currently stand in the shifting landscape of global economic influence? Right, because it's, well, one of the questions, the United States, is it still the hegemon? Is it still the economic power? It has China overtaken it? Is it is questions like that? There are a lot of questions as to where we are right now.
Well, for example, USA last 20 or 30 years, the their battle experience, how many war they were involved, probably many. So
Yes.
it had a huge cost. While China probably last 40 years, they actively didn't participate in any war except maybe Vietnam War. So they were focusing on economy, and their political system is very centralized, while the economy is decentralized. So, meaning the businessman cannot oversee the political power, while in USA, the businessman can influence politics. So that's why the national interest matters for China. Since in USA, for example, top businessmen they can invest in different countries because their primary motive is a profit maximization. Probably Chinese motive is something different, maybe national interest. So that's why I think the economic power last 30, 40 years changed a lot globally. And when USA start to use sanction, for instance, Iran, so Iran learned how to survive, and probably China played a significant role. So in counterpart, if I consider China, Iran, Russia, North Korea, they have a comparative advantage. While China has economic power and technological power, Russia has military power, also hydrocarbon, natural resources. Iran has natural resources. Iran also could manage to develop their own technology, military technology. Now they are exporting. So that's why, because of this comparative advantage in counterpart, so they created a bloc. And this bloc has a significant heterogeneity with religion or with beliefs, but they have some common goal, commonness, because they are suffering somewhat politically or maybe unfair trade game. So that's why they make a this block, which is Brics. So Brics, officially they are not telling that whether it is a counterpart of any other blocks, but Brics playing a significant macroprudential policy to save each other from any kind of economic sanction. Probably this is the reason that enormous sanction from Western world, for example, Russia right now, they're encountering more than 16,000 sanctions, more than North Korea. Even their central bank under sanctions. So they were expecting that Russian economy is going to be paralyzed, but nothing happened. Still, Russian economy is enjoying the positive economic growth. So what is the main policy? The policy, the trade direction has been changed from the Western bloc to Eastern country, for example, India, China. So they found a way to sell their products and the economy is going fine. I think you have seen last 2, 3 weeks ago when you were in Moscow, you didn't see any meaningful impact of sanction in the economy.
Yes. Um, and let me, I think part of it is this, where we are now is um, part of having a strong economic base is the having a market to sell your goods, a place to sell your goods. And when you look at the population size of a China, okay, China sells goods outside, but they've got 1 billion people, a market at home. Russia is part of their market. Iran is part of their market. So when these countries can come together, because the United States, one of the games that they play is the United States has a huge economic market, and you want to sell things to us because we buy lots of things. We will, as a punishment, we can shut that off, and you can't sell things to our market, and you will suffer. But as long as these countries can find an alternative market, and when they come together, there's a huge alternative market, then the sanctions and the ability to utilize the US market to punish other countries, to destabilize other countries becomes untenable. It doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Okay, next. And this is similar, but it's a little different because we basically said, where are we? Where are we worldwide in the shifting landscape? Brics. What is the current state of Brics? What are its core strengths and weaknesses? And what strategic steps does it need to take? When there's discussion of Brics, there are those who argue Brics is strong, it's powerful, it's
Mm,
going, Brics is ready to move on and be a powerful
mm,
entity. There are others that say Brics is in its infancy. It has a future, a great future, but it still has to build a lot of its infrastructure. And it's the Brics is very weak, but it has plans, and the United States and its allies still, they seem to believe we can still stop Brics and tear it down. What is the state of Brics, and what does it need to do as far as building infrastructure? Is it very, very vulnerable? Is it strong yet? Things of that nature.
As an economist, what is my assessment about BRICS? BRICS certainly has some advantage. The first advantage is that its population is more than 40% population living in the BRICS country. So in this population, what does it mean? In in economics, mostly we consider like the per capita income. So per capita income has some flaws with this parameter measures. If you look at some small country like Switzerland or Luxembourg or Qatar, Singapore, their per capita income is very high. But when it comes to geopolitics, it's very insignificant because of the low population. Because in economics, there is a two side. One is a producer, one is a consumer. So you can replace your economy with a robot or AI, but who is going to be a consumer? So the BRICS, there is a consumer and there is a producer. So if China is producing, China has also the huge market of BRICS. So let's say India has more than 1 billion people. Then now Indonesia also joined BRICS. There's a huge population. So the population is really something need to be considered when it comes to geopolitics and the global power. While European Union or the Western blocs, their fertility rate, population growth is declining and declining. In global south, particularly in BRICS country, population is rising. So that can define the future power. Besides economic power of BRICS, it's already, I think, overtake G7 GDP. So it's more than G7 GDP in BRICS. In last couple of years, I see that the inter-trade in BRICS significantly rise because of the geoeconomic fragmentation. So because of geoeconomic fragmentation, basically the inter-trade among different blocks is rising in ASEAN, in BRICS, G7, in European Union, even in MENA countries. But the growth rate in BRICS is higher than any other country, and especially the trade with Russia, China, then Brazil with China, and trade with Russia and India increased significantly. So these are the advantage. Also, BRICS the form a new development bank as an alternative, though it's really not functioning very well right now, but probably it will. BRICS has a lot of diversity, heterogeneity from country to country, as you can see. Russia is more about European, China has their own culture, India has a different culture. But despite all the differences, I think there is a commonness. So this is their policy. They do not want the whole world as a carbon copy of one system. That's why Chinese philosopher thinker is saying that do not try to imitate Chinese policy, Chinese economic framework. You rather should find your own framework. But the Western framework is different. No, they want to see the rest of the world as a carbon copy. In politically, economically, socially, in thinking, everything has to be very centralized. But here they respect others' view, which is good. So despite all these differences, still there is a commonness, which I think is a positive side. Then the in recent development, we also see that they start to trade with the local currency, so bilateral trade. So when Russia was under sanction, even the central bank, they had no choice but to trade with the local currency. So, but the local currency, now I will come back to the disadvantage. What is the challenge the BRICS is facing? So bilateral trade with local currency has a problem if it is not symmetric trade. Let's say if Russia right now is exporting maybe 100 billion to India, the hydrocarbon, oil, gas. But in compare, Russia is importing very less from India. So right now, if this trade happens with the bilateral, I mean this currency, local currency. So if Russia earns a lot of Indian rupees, whether Russia can buy the product from other country with this rupee. So it doesn't have the universal acceptance. That is one of the drawbacks of local currency. But if the trade is symmetric, in that case, local currency is fine. So which is perfectly is going on with between Russia and China, since their trade is very much symmetric, meaning the amount of import and export between these two countries almost similar. So they can use their own currency. But if in the case asymmetric trade, the local currency is not a solution. So that's why probably last summit 2 years ago, I forgot exactly the name of the country, whether it is South Africa or Brazil. They proposed a common currency.
Yes.
But the common proposed currency was not accepted by all the members, especially India, because each country has their own interest. So there is a considerable conflict of interest, especially we see that conflict of interest between China and India with the border issues and other issues. So since Chinese economy is a giant, is leader, where other countries GDP is not that great, not that big amount. So if there is a common currency, then obviously China will dominate. Apparently, so the counterpart may think about like that way. So that's why I believe that there will not no consensus among creating the common currency. But what I see that they may think about some alternative. Maybe it can be gold-based tokenization, where the new development bank can play a central role to make the trade very smooth. That can be the alternative of SWIFT system. And one more drawbacks in BRICS is that the creation of institution. So, for example, when USA becomes superpower just after the Second World War, they created so many international or supra-international institutions like World Bank, IMF. But we do not see any kind of institution so far uh, in BRICS, except New Development Bank, but its functionality is still limited. But there are many works to be done. And probably, yeah, that's all about the limitations. Maybe one more limitation is that I do not see any clear-cut long-term goal of BRICS, what they want to be.
It seems to me that while BRICS states that currently, and I think this may be out of necessity, currently, BRICS is there to a big part of BRICS's job is to address a problem that they have. These countries have a common problem. And the common problem, I believe, is dealing with the U.S., the deterioration of the U.S. Empire, and the U.S. and the U.S. attempt to overcome that deterioration in a very aggressive way. So I think that by necessity, BRICS can't focus on building itself out as far as institutions and other ways, because as BRICS grows, it has to address the constant, whether it's sanctions or tariffs or other means that are used by the US aggressively and assertively against members of BRICS. So as BRICS wants to grow, create institutions and other things, they wake up every month and the United States is, we're going to take this aggressive economic action against Brazil. And BRICS has to come together and say, how do we support Brazil? Then the next month, the US says, we're taking an aggressive action against Russia. And the BRICS has to come together and say, how do we fend off this particular thing? So I think BRICS has it's not a weakness. I would argue you could argue it's a strength, but there is the need to address the current problems that are currently arising. I think that slows BRICS available. If you're focusing on putting the fires out that are arising today, you can't come up with your plan for building your new house in the future. You have to keep putting out these fires today. And I think that's something by necessity that makes it difficult for BRICS to focus on long-term projects.
So from academically, we can say that why two countries they cooperate or not to cooperate. So there is a very famous theory called game theory. So in game theory, let's say there are some payoff metrics, meaning whether cheating with you gives me more benefit or not, or the cooperation will give me more benefit. In the case of BRICS, I think their cooperation, common cooperation, gives them the highest payoff metrics. So that's called Nash equilibrium. So they do not have any choice rather to cooperate. Though in some countries, for example, India, sometimes they play a very balanced foreign policy with the East and West. Uh, but we can understand in the general motives.
Yes. All right. Now, here's a question that I have, because we hear, here in the West, particularly, and those of us who are not, economically astute, shall we say, we don't study economics, we don't know a lot about these various organizations, but you hear these terms, ASEAN, SCO, okay, the Shanghai Cooperation. We know the name of them, as they say, we know the music, but we don't know the words, right? I hear BRICS. How, and now clearly an SEO or ASEAN will be local, more localized in an area. But how does BRICS, SEO, and ASEAN differ? And do you see a future where they come together, or is there a necessity? Will there still, as BRICS grows, be the necessity for these individual organizations to continue to exist in the long run?
As I said that we are going through very much fragmented world. It's a geoeconomic fragmentation. This fragmentation, one of the significant fragmentation took place during financial crisis in 2007 in USA. So that was from US economy, let's say from real estate sector. But because of this financial crisis, how many countries they suffered overnight? That was a significant blow to the economy, world economy. So every country's economists they think that this economy is no longer a country-specific model. We need a global model because there is a significant spillover effect from one country to another country. So we need a macroprudential, we need a regional cooperation, not to be connected with whole world. If this system somehow collapsed, then whole economy will collapse. Then we also experienced COVID. During COVID, people could not travel from one country to another country. So many countries, including Australia, they were thinking about that no, we have to be self-sufficient, so self-reliant. We need to focus on our own economy. If the globalization system collapses so that we can survive. So that's why the regional cooperation, I think that's the way to look forward. And since ASEAN is a very strong and stable bloc, and their trade, their economic cooperation is um, is booming over time, smoothly increasing. The Shanghai Cooperation probably slightly different. It's not necessarily economic cooperation. Rather, it is a military cooperation that probably can be a counterpart of NATO because of NATO's involvement in so many wars and regime change. So probably the counterpart was thinking they should have some alternative like Brics as an economy. So military, they should have also military cooperation. So this is how I see the difference. But this is obvious that regional cooperation or regionalizations is on the move since deglobalization is going down, is diminishing over time.
Oh, that now I understand. Well, that makes sense, and it's reasonable because even as BRICS grows, in the event of things, and I'm just using it as examples, such as COVID, where um, the broad trade between countries all over the world is not possible for one reason or another, any reason that we couldn't even imagine, it will still allow local countries to survive in a small, you're building smaller nodes that are allowed to survive if in case the larger group is no longer able to cooperate in the way that they were, or a war or something like that. So now I understand it makes sense. And it also tells me that they're not redundant to BRICS. They could become integrated with BRICS in a way in that they maybe, when their various infrastructures of BRICS, such as various banks or economic infrastructures, they could maybe access those infrastructures for one reason or another, but they wouldn't want to be completely married to those infrastructures so that they can't survive without them. This is about, is that the way you see it?
Regarding infrastructures in BRICS, the protection of the infrastructure, is it your question, if I understand correctly?
Well, I'll put it like this. Now let's do that. Let's go. Let's completely go in that direction because that is an important question that I have. One of the things that I thought about was the power of Siberia. These new gigantic, large, huge pipelines that are being built between Russia and China. In light of what happened back in the 1980s or 90s, I believe it was, the CIA blew up a Russian oil pipe. That's one of the Siberian pipelines, right? We've seen attacks on the various pipelines and things like that, ammonia pipelines and various other infrastructure in Ukraine during Ukraine conflict, and of course
Right.
the infamous Nord Stream. In light of that, um, will BRICS, since some of these things, particularly maybe financed by a BRICS bank or financed through numerous countries that are involved in BRICS, will it be advantageous or necessary at some point for BRICS to build a security component? As an example, a drone network that flies along these pipelines, that has cameras and integrated maybe satellites so they can continue to look at these pipelines to make sure that nobody's interfering with it, that BRICS would have the financial capacity, and that various countries, I mean, if there are 3 countries involved in this pipeline, they all want this thing to happen. So your thoughts about the potential for a security component to protect critical infrastructure for BRICS?
Yeah, I think right now economics and politics go in the same direction. I mean, synchronized in the same time. But back in the history, we see that even the 2 countries are fighting each other, but their trade was going on because the trade is necessarily is related with the with mankind. I mean, the standard of living. So basic things like the food, water, the basic necessities things. So the trade was not affected by the war. But we see right now the economy is a part of the weapon. Trade is weaponized in geopolitics. So one of the classical example we see that Nord Stream pipeline that has been destroyed, and I think this U.S. journalist Tuckerson asked this question to President Putin precisely, and he gave a very diplomatic answer. He said, "Okay, who blew up this Nord Stream pipeline?" And he answered that who has intention to do it and capacity to do it. Someone may be interested to do it and who has capacity to do it. I think that answer is very clear for all knowledgeable people to understand. Uh, so yeah, I mean, in this infrastructure, I think is very important since the trade direction of trade has been changed because of so many sanction or geoeconomic fragmentation. So that's why there should be the alternative trade route, and it needs a huge investment. So upfront cost is very high, but eventually uh, the the average cost or the marginal cost over time will go down since uh, let's say energy trade integration between Europe and Russia that gives a mutual benefit for the both economies. So Russia was enjoying, and the Europe was also their industrialization was going up because of the cheaper energy. But after this destruction of the pipeline, that we clearly see that Europe is suffering with their energy price. The inflation is very high, energy inflation particularly. Though they could manage it by importing US LNG with a higher price, but so the European economy could manage it from the two way. One way is deindustrialization, meaning their industrialization is going down. Also, the consumption, the household consumption is also going down. So this is how they are managing the energy crisis. As for Russia, the direction of the trade uh, changed, and it is the mostly the export is going to India and China. So they need a alternative trade routes and infrastructure. But this infrastructure also has to be protected. Probably Shanghai Cooperation can supplement it. Uh, the Brics economic cooperation infrastructure. But along with the physical infrastructure, I think the financial infrastructure is more important for sanction economy because you know how the trade take place. Let's say if any importer uh, wants to import uh, Russian hydrocarbon in their economy, so it will be based on the letter of credit. The Russian economy, Russian bank should be able to take the letter of credit because other country they have some legislation in importing. So in legislation they need uh, letter of credit, they need mm, bill of loading and country of origin certificate of the product. So since it is sanction economy, so Russian bank may not accept this letter of credit. So financial infrastructure is very vital to to decouple any negative impact of the sanction in Brics economy. Right.
That makes
Also
sense.
cyber security, yes.
Oh, good point. I didn't think about that. So when I think of security, we traditionally think of just the physical security. Someone could blow up a bridge, or whatever,
Yeah.
right? You can build a bridge, somebody blows up a bridge. But in today's world, you have to say cybersecurity may be at the top because that's the
Yeah.
easiest and probably least expensive way. If you can get in, you can destroy things with cybersecurity. We've seen some of those. And then, of course, economic security. So if you are able to infiltrate using cybersecurity or to economically destabilize an important institution, there's no need to blow up the pipeline. There's no need for a
Yep.
physical attack if a cyber attack or a economic attack is effective.
Yeah. I would like to add one more point about this financial infrastructure. For instance, China had a vision to make yuan as a reserve currency. So last 10 years, China yuan joined this club as a reserve currency. So after all these years, let's say 10 years, right now their share in the global reserve currency is approximately 2.5%, which is not very significant. But in another way, we can say before 10 years, there was no yuan as a reserve currency. So that's a positive side. But recently, I see the Chinese bank, they announced that they're going to have a digital yuan with number of countries in MENA and ASEAN country, all ASEAN country. So if they successfully can implement, I think that will be a significant step in monetarism and world monetarism. But I believe that they will face some consequences from USA. Uh, I doubt whether they can successfully implement, but that can be a beginning. I'm also not very big fan of this blockchain technology or distributed ledger system, this kind of a technology, because if all this trade take place with the cryptocurrency or digital currency, these digital things probably can be breakdown with quantum computing. And we do not know because there can be different type of technology can do it. I'm not very expert in this area, but what I understand that this kind of technology can be vulnerable by the counterpart. So if it can blow, then I mean the whole system can collapse. Then probably if there is no physical record what individual is holding their money in the bank, then they overnight they can lose everything. So money, I think, should not be that much vulnerable.
I never thought about that. I will, the last thing I'll end up saying is I think that the people, a big discussion about the Ukraine conflict is physically, that okay, the physical domination of the US via NATO and other organizations have been compromised as a result of Russia's success in the special military operation. But to me, what's not discussed as much is how the world was changed, how economics in the world and the view of economics in the world has changed as a result of the futility of the sanctions. Not that they haven't had some success against Russia, but Russia's ability to fend off the sanctions, I believe, that has demonstrated that the Western plan for a financialized economy, speculation and investments with the Western institutions, the City of London, Wall Street, they basically argued that um, these this was the way to of the future. Speculation, investment, financial tools that we don't even understand, derivatives and asset-backed securities and things like that. But I think that the ability of Russia to withstand the onslaught of um, um, these sanctions in a large part because they have solid commodities and industry, real things that are non-speculatory that are produced, and because they were able to sell these real things, and people needed them. They didn't have to go out and beg someone to take oil. People will come to them. And I think in a way, in an interesting way, it reminded people that originally people needed rice or sugar or beef, and they traded rice or sugar or beef, and then they changed, and we'll use clamshells to represent, we'll use money to symbolize the rice, sugar, and beef. But in the real world, you still have to have rice, sugar, and beef. And I think it reminded people that solid, real things in the real world are the foundation for economy, and these asset-backed securities and financial speculation in the long run, I think they are beginning to die out as the foundation for an economic system.
Maybe I can add a few points. Russian macroeconomic potential or policy to lower the negative impact of the sanction. First, you are very right that Russian economy in financial market there is no bubble because the stock market is not playing a significant role. Russian economy there are so many regions, mainly the banking sector playing the ultimate role here. So there is no financial bubble, and the amount of high-powered money, physical money, can precisely represent the real economy, the physical goods and services. So when there is no financial bubble, there will be no financial stress. On this topic, I have several research papers. Besides, well, there was a because of some speculation, some Russian individual they tried to buy US dollar, uh, the foreign currency. Then central bank increased the price. The spread between buying and selling was very high. So that's why then another point thing is the inflation. Because of the high inflation, central bank increased their key rate. And this key rate, to some extent, I think was very effective tool to curb inflation. Right now, inflation gone down, and yeah, so and the trade diversification. Beside the economy focused on localization on many products, so those things they rely on the other country to import from European countries. Even in the aviation, Russia is focusing their local product. So I think in long run, the Russian economy will survive, and there is a huge potential because potential GDP of Russia is much more higher because there is a lot of capacity. They have natural resources. They need to utilize it. Russia has different prototype of technology. Russia need markets. So when Brics will be thriving, they will have some new political integration with other country. They will get a new markets. Then when they can sell the product, I believe that Russian economy has a huge potential to grow.
Well, thank you very much.
And
We're talking.
yeah, maybe one
Yeah, go
more
ahead.
point
Sure,
about the
certainly.
finance. For instance, in our macroeconomic textbook, monetary economics textbook, we study about the functionality of money. So, what is money? Money should have some attribute. One is it should be the medium of exchange. Then money should have a store value, and money should be acceptable for by everybody. But when it comes to cryptocurrency or other form of currency or the fiat currency, so when it has no backup, I mean whether it can represent the real economy, when there is too much speculation, that's why there are a lot of financial bubble. And because of the monetarism, precisely the reason for all the social inequality, I believe. So that's the main evil, monetarism. So you can see the go back to the history, you see the lot of changes in monetarism, and you can relate with the big war. When there was a big war, and the monetarism has changed, and it has been now right now very centralized currency. So from the gold standard, then is a petrodollar concept. Now probably there is no backup or nothing. So out of nothing, the money can be created. Now the cryptocurrency, we do not know it belongs to who, though they have a good point. It is a decentralized currency, it's not by central bank. But whether it can fulfill these attributes of money, if it, like a store value, if I'm producing some kind of a perishable item, I cannot keep it all the time. So if I sell it, I can keep the money. But this money is going down because of the enormous inflation. And when there is an inflation, expansionary monetary policy, the resource is going from one hand to another hand. And the bottom segment of the society, the mainly losers, their purchasing power is going down and down. So I believe this monetarism is the greatest evil in the history of mankind.
And define when you say monetarism for those who may not understand. When you define monetarism.
Monetarism, when like the banking whole banking system, a speculation. So previously, money had just only one role, the medium of exchange, and it was intrinsic value, like gold, silver. So it not necessarily you can just produce it out of nothing. So when it is gold, if you have 1 ounce of gold, it doesn't matter whether it is in Washington or in Moscow or in Delhi, it has the same value. But when it comes to currency or dollar or euro or other currency, some currencies value is going down and down for no reason. They are doing the same economy, like in Turkish economy or Pakistan economy or the Iranian economy, you see. In Libya economy, it used to be a welfare country. Now no country is going to accept their currency.
I
So
see.
that's a huge gamble, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think to me, so monetarism, you could say a country is an industrialist country in that everything's focused on industry, and maybe monetarism is that it's kind of like I refer to a financialized economy or a
Yeah,
speculatory economy, that it's all about money. It's not about, but the money, since it's not based on gold or silver or anything else, it's only value, it's almost like crypto. The only value of the money is what actually people are willing to give you for that money. And if people decide overnight they're not willing to give you anything for that money, or they don't like the value of the money, it's not connected to gold or anything else. The money like that can be worth nothing,
yeah,
or like that could be worth 10. And that's not healthy for economics, because there's no way, you have no stability. For economics, you need stability so that you can predict the future. If I want to build a factory to make things, I need to be stable. I need to kind of understand how much it's going to cost me to build this factory, what my costs are going to be, predict what my sales are. I need some stability. And if the money can just disappear and go up or down overnight, then why would I invest in building a factory when I have no stable way of predicting that once I build that factory, it will have any value? Is that kind of correct?
exactly. Yeah. You can
Yes.
see that all the financial institutions, so don't necessarily they do not have any role in the real economy, but their market capitalization is going up and up. If you look at Vanguard or BlackRock, you can see their market capitalization, maybe um, 17 or 18 or 20 trillion dollar.
But they produce nothing. They don't grow
Yeah,
wheat.
yeah,
They
yeah,
don't produce
yeah. But they
glasses
make
or
money. They make money, out of
yes,
nothing.
yes. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kazi Sohag. I certainly
Yeah,
appreciate the discussion with you. And I do have, oh, I've lost it. Darn it. Dr. Sohag is the Associate Professor of St. Petersburg State University. He's the Director of the International Regional Economics Research Group. The papers that you have, we were talking about, that you published earlier, and I think they were concerning how Russia maybe has overcome the sanctions and things of that nature. Are they published in English?
yes, yes, in
I'm
good journal.
Great. I would appreciate if you could send me links or some way that I could access those. I would love to read them, and maybe that's a very, very interesting topic that I would like to do a future show on. So because I think there are a lot of people in the West who would like to understand. Many of us who looked at it, and we were concerned what's going to happen, and then people were surprised how well, not of course without some economic pain, but how well Russia was able to withstand and overcome these sanctions. So if you could send me that, I'll review it, and I'd certainly like to talk about that in the future.
Thank you. I'll send it to you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, as always, for joining us for this show. Thank you for all my Patreon members. I certainly appreciate everyone that keeps this show going. And there's all the things going across the bottom, ways that you can contact me. I have a PO box if you wish to mail or support the show. The most important thing you can do is share this show on all your social media platforms. Thank you very much. We're out.
Thank you.
Oops, hold on. No, we're not out.